Hi, everybody. This is Andrew Unkefer, and I want to welcome you to today's interview, which promises to be very intriguing for anyone working within the financial services or insurance industry. For many years, I've been personally fascinated by the stories of others who've established an industry, paved their own way to success, and yet they left a legacy for others that they can learn from to follow and achieve their own level of excellence. And that's why I'm excited today to introduce all of you to a gentleman of extraordinary experience and wisdom. My guest today is Gary Schulte. Gary is the founder and CEO of Financial Strategies Network, a training, education, and mentoring organization for financial service professionals. He has over 50 years of experience, including building and managing some of the financial services industry's leading organizations. His career includes noteworthy accomplishments as a financial advisor, senior executive, insurance company president, and a leading consultant to the industry. As a field manager, he was one of the industry's first recipients of the Gamma National Management Award. After serving 14 years as a senior executive and insurance company president, he became a leading consultant in the financial services industry. Some of Gary's clients include Pacific Life, Merrill Lynch, Prudential, JP Morgan Chase, Mass Mutual, AIG, and M Financial. Wow. Gary is the author of 4 books on financial services and has been a frequent guest on TV and radio, including as a featured guest on The Larry King Show. His latest book is available on Amazon, and it's titled From Irrelevant to Indispensable. Gary, welcome to the interview today.
Thank you, Andy.
Well, Gary, I know this series really is your brainchild. Your plan, as I remember when we talked about it, was to conduct a series of interviews where you tap into some of the greatest minds in the history of the insurance industry. This will be a journey where we'll meet the industry legends who built tremendous companies from scratch and who've learned from decades of experience and innovation. The dream: to share wisdom from the past with an eye on innovation for the future. Now, Gary, I'm looking forward to our talk, but I really wanted to start with your thoughts about the sad news regarding the loss of your longtime friend and industry superstar legend, Barry Kaye. Is it true that he passed away from complications having to do with contracting COVID-19?
Yes, it is, Andy. In fact, tragically, he and his wife both contracted it and died within 6 days of one another.
Oh, wow.
The memorial service was conducted in New York yesterday. I couldn't go to it because of the travel issues and the problems. But Barry was an icon and a hero of mine, and really an innovator that has made contributions to all of us that are almost too numerous to mention.
Yeah, I took the time to read a little bit about him and his background, and then how charitable he was late in life, supporting research at the University of Miami for diabetes research. And he's just a sensational, charismatic personality. How did you meet Barry Kaye originally?
Well, it's an interesting story. I was the newly appointed Chief Marketing Officer of Executive Life of California, which at the time was the hottest act in show business. And we were exploding with growth, and we attracted production from every significant or well-known producer, including the presidents of MDRT, CLU, AALU, etc. And my first day on the job, Fred Carr, my partner and boss, said, there's a guy in the conference room that has some ideas I want you to meet. I went in, and there was the incredible Barry Kaye, who was so bigger than life. And he treated me like an old friend. He was gracious and kind. And the thing about that experience, and we'll talk later about Executive Life, is all of our ideas and all of the innovations, not only there, but in my career prior to that as a Chief Marketing Officer for 7 years at Protective Life, all of our good ideas came from the field. And my job at Executive Life was to vet them and determine that, they would work and they were compliant and they were suitable and all the like. And Barry's idea in that particular day was the kind of thing that only Barry Kaye could imagine. He could do it, but we could never train other people to do it because he was a genius.
So, in your experience with him, what do you think made him such a super success that set him apart? And is there something that we can learn from Barry in spite of that incredible talent he had?
Oh, yes. He taught me a lot. The first thing, and I think the most important of us learn, is we have to have a passion, conviction about the product we sell. Barry thought life insurance was the greatest product in the history of financial service. He believed it with his heart, and he sold it that way. And because of the numbers, which is really important today, because if we're buying because of the numbers, we're be extinct, what our new book is about. Barry knew that they bought his conviction, his belief, his commitment to service, and that he had an answer that was valuable to everyone. It was conviction and belief, and you have to have that. It's one of the things that I don't see as much as I'd like today.
So, with that, learning that Barry Kaye was committed and had a conviction and belief in his practice, what are some of the tools that an agent might want, or an advisor who's in this economic environment we find ourselves in, that they can have a passion for the advice they're giving? I think a lot of people are starting to rethink what they've been saying to the customers.
Well, Barry was an innovative marketer, and we have to remember our job is to market. At the end of the day, whether we want to admit it or not, we are salespeople. We're planners, we're advisors, we're confidants, we're friends of our clients, but we are salespeople. And one of the things he did was commit to a process. He was process driven. When you saw Barry go through a sale, and I saw him go through many, he had a process. He was committed to it, and the client had to trust his process.
Mm.
So again, they weren't buying a product, they were buying a solution to a problem. They weren't buying life insurance, they were buying what life insurance did. And they believed it would do it because of what Barry told them it would do. And his conviction just sparkled. I mean, and so that's the one thing that hasn't changed. It doesn't matter today how everything else with technology has changed. If you don't have that conviction, that ability to emulate your belief in what you're doing, you're going to have a tough time going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a great example there to identify process that works. And I know that you spend a lot of time with the people around you trying to cultivate processes that are winning for people that work in financial services. And that helps a lot because I don't know that everybody's born with the charisma of Barry Kaye. I read that his own auditorium that he would present in would hold 500 people at a time. Imagine making an insurance presentation to 500 people. It's just really extraordinary what he was able to do. But
Well,
a lot of things have changed since his heyday, and I think we've seen some dramatic impact, recently. So I'd like to ask you: is robo advice and technology going to replace the agent and the financial advisor in the future? And if not, how do we stop that from happening?
well, first, because of the coronavirus, you may hear my German Shepherd and my Golden Doodle barking in the background.
That's okay.
I apologize for that. But let me give you an example. The the music may have changed, but the words haven't. And the words of building a relationship with a client, establishing trust and confidence, are what our business is all about. It's not about the product. It's not about the strategies even. It's about who you are and what you bring to the table. And I have a few analogies I'd like to share with you. Um, One is if you want to really, first of all, I know that people listening to this listen to dinosaurs like me and they think, gee, what can I learn from a Barry Kaye or a Gary Schulte?
A
Well,
lot.
I understand that. But when I sat at the feet of Ben Feldman and the people before us, I learned everything I needed to know to succeed in this business. And reason I'm doing these events is to communicate those values. And I had the analogy I would use, because I use a lot of analogies. Think of Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo. Would I, in my house here in Southern California at a little beach town called San Clemente, would I hang a copy of the Mona Lisa or the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in my house? I don't think so. But would I want to learn from the people who created those works how they did it? It took Da Vinci 6 years to paint the Mona Lisa. Now, he didn't just do that, he did a lot of other things. Sorry, my earplug came out. But it took 6 years to perfect it. And what we have to do in our profession is refine, improve, and perfect our process. It is the thing that our new book is full of, and what I teach in our study group, Financial Strategies Network, is that the process is your product. It doesn't matter what the product is. If Da Vinci was painting today, he wouldn't be painting Mona Lisa, but he'd be painting something that sold, I damn well guarantee you. And Michelangelo, my favorite quote from him was, if people only knew what I had to do to attain mastery, the end result wouldn't seem so impressive at all. I mean, if you packed a lunch every day and went to the Cincy Chapel for 7 years and watched this old man up on a platform painting the ceiling for 7 years, you might not be impressed. I think I would be. But the point is, the process is what we learn from the masters, from the Barry Kays and the other great people that hopefully we're going to interview on this series. That's the thing that technology can never take away. That is how we become indispensable as opposed to irrelevant. And if we focus on product and numbers, we will never become indispensable.
Well, that's great. And I love that word indispensable. When you are an integral part of people's decision making on the future of their retirement, you are indispensable. And I really look forward to hearing all the things that you uncrack from the wisdom of the ages in our industry. So let's move on to talking about current events. We've got a lot of economic turmoil, high unemployment, the stock market's crashed, we've got low interest rates, the Fed's pumping money into the system. There just seems to be nothing happening other than bad news, and we're losing jobs more than ever before. And I've heard you say some things that have given me pause about insurance companies, that they're going to have some trouble in the future. And without sharing names, what can you reveal to those who are listening and watching right now?
Well, it's not good news, but let me give you some good news first. In the history of financial services in America, there has never been a financial crisis that people couldn't blame their stockbroker, their financial advisor, their insurance agent for. This is the first time we were completely innocent, and they still love us because they're not going to blame us for it. So we've got a reason to call them, and we shouldn't shy away from the phone because the market's down. They aren't going to blame us. They know what the cause is. So what a great time to communicate with your clients. Now, having said that, we need to have an understanding of what's going on behind the curtain. I guess, in the words of Dan Sullivan, if you had to describe my unique ability, my unique talent, is that I have spent a third of my career in the field, a third of my career behind the curtain as a senior executive, working with all of the high-level board-level people. And then the last third, doing what I'm doing here today, which is sharing what I've learned. Behind the curtain, insurance companies are in for a very, very tough run. Um, Insurance companies grow slowly and they diminish slowly. So we're going to see a cliff drop with insurance companies like you do with the stock market or other businesses because we are so uh, complicated in our portfolio. The portfolio of New York Life can no longer deliver the interest rates that would allow them to pay a dividend. In fact, they can't even get an interest rate that would allow them to guarantee the cash value at the 3% or whatever they guarantee. So they're in trouble. And it's been going on for 15 years. That's the issue. This is nothing new. But 5 years ago, I had dinner with the CEO of a top five. Sorry, guys, I only have one earplug. I had dinner with the CEO of a top five life insurance company. He told me, we don't know what we're going to do if these low interest rates continue. They've got to go up. Everybody says they've got to go up. Well, it's 5 years later, and they're now down to zero. So I don't want to get into the details of the way I understand how to read a balance sheet, but I do. Insurance companies are going into a pretty defensive mode, a survival mode. And the thing I want to convey to producers is business is business. They've got to do what they've got to do. It doesn't make them bad or evil, but they're going to do what they're going to do. The regulators are going to do what they've got to do. The important thing I want to convey to the people on this broadcast is you need to understand that no one has your back anymore. We are on our own. That's not a bad thing. We can make a good thing out of it. But we've got to understand when, I've been there around the board meetings of an insurance company, and when they had crises back in the 1980s when prime interest hit 20% and every emptying their policy, why would they take 6% or 4% when they can get 20? It was called disintermediation, and it was catastrophic. They had a lot of discussion about what they were going to do, but none of it involved how are we going to take care of our agents. And I aim to say that. I'm not saying they didn't care. They were about them, but they were lower in the queue than the shareholders, and correctly so, the policyholder.
Right.
So we are on our own right now. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means we have to be guided by some of the important things we've learned from our past. Never before has history in our business been more important than it is now. If you're going to plan for the future, you've got to understand the history.
Boy, I agree with you, and I love to hear you say that. I think there are some great principles, processes, and practices that have become forgotten, and it's up to us as the advisors to seek those ideas and strategies out that really work for people. And so let's talk about agents. There are new young agents entering our industry. Some people can't believe it, but there are. I've seen them. And then we've got a whole group of middle-aged people that have some experience, and we have even a larger group of highly seasoned professionals that have many, many decades of experience and habits. Do you have a unifying message that you would give to all three of them at the same time, Gary?
Well, no, I think I have individual messages,
Let's
just
hear
as
it.
I would give to my grandchild and my child and my friends that are my age. For a new person coming in the business, understand that the institutions that you represent, the product providers, the broker dealers, the insurance companies, they're in a bit of a bind right now. We have allowed regulation to become so litigious that when I was the age of a person coming in the business, I came in right out of college at 21, I had an abundance of training and education and support, and I had a huge agency full of mentors that were in their 50s and 60s that had been enormously successful. There were 100 agents in my agency at the Equitable in Detroit. That benefit is gone. Not only do you not have the producers around you that you can learn from, but the institutions are taking all the money that used to go to training, education, and development to compliance and CYA, and basically staying out of trouble. And everything they give you, if you've noticed, is information. It's not training. So I would say to a young person, call me and I'll give you some information in my library of the people who taught and trained me and the people I taught and trained, of which I've written a couple of books on, because there are some things that never change. There's an old cliche that the more things change, the more they stay the same. What that cliche really means is the cosmetics change, but the fundamental values of what works and how things work never change. And so you got to get that from somewhere. And I don't see anybody but my generation and maybe yours and Indy that's able to deliver that.
So you're really saying seek out the mentorship and training that no longer exists, that's not being delivered by the insurance companies, but it's out there. You have to find it.
It's there. You've got to look for it. I didn't have to when I came in. It was delivered on a silver platter, and I sat in a cubicle with some great people all around me. They had offices, I didn't. And I learned so much. And then I was trained by probably one of the greatest agency managers in the industry. And I was lucky. But young today got to make their own luck. And they've got to do their own research and dig in, because the opportunities are greater than ever. We're not growing that many people. The need is greater than ever for the product. And the opportunity, even despite our current dilemma, when we come out of the bunker and look at the damage, there's going to be great opportunity. You just have to know how to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I think that's also a good message maybe for the next group that we'll talk about, those that are, 40, 50 years old, have a good amount of experience, and they've got a client book. But my message to them, and maybe you agree with this, would be that what a great time to be persistent and don't step out of the industry. Don't lose your momentum. Continue to invest in your marketing, learn new ways to do it with online technology like we're doing today, and tap into the opportunity, because there's fewer insurance agents working in the financial services arena than ever before. And yet we have the
Right.
largest population of people heading towards retirement that we've ever had. So to me, it's a message of persistency and learning how to innovate. What do you think about that?
I completely agree. The skill of selling, which involves outreach, contacts, continuing to be in touch with people, all these things that have kind of been lost. People are very concerned. And isn't it great? People that have a need and are concerned about their financial situation, and they aren't blaming their financial advisor. What a great time to go talk to them. One thing, just one of many examples I give in my events that I host, my summits, is that ask a 50 or 60-year-old, go up to them during this and say, by the way, I have a responsibility I need to discharge. I have had some developments in our industry occur that I didn't expect. And that is, there seems to be something that I would call elder abuse going on among people in their 80s and 90s whose policies are being raped, frankly. They're being tripled premiums. They're increasing the cost of insurance, and it's a very dangerous situation. So I have a fiduciary obligation just to put this in your file. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. But can you tell me, are your parents and your spouse's parents still living? And if he says, yeah, my dad owned 4 tire stores and he's retired now and he's 85 and he had $1 million key man insurance policy, boy, oh boy. And the regulators are coming in line with this life settlement stuff. It's no longer a rogue application. It's been refined and perfected if you go to the right providers. And there is a fiduciary obligation. So that's just one example of how a 40 or 50-year-old producer can call on their clients. And then obviously there's all the other stuff about coming out of the bunker and assessing the damage, again, which will not be your fault. But there, if you, for example, if you sold an index product in the last 15 years, your clients should be calling you and sending you roses.
They're pretty happy, yeah.
We didn't maybe know that then, but boy, oh boy, has it turned out that way. So, if you've done that, you've got a lot of people that are going to hug you when they see you again.
Yeah, some of our products have just done exactly what they were designed to do and allow people to participate in
Yeah.
beneficial times and sit out the bad ones. And it certainly has been a shot in the arm for our industry. I think the forecast ahead is very strong for indexing products, whether it's life insurance or annuity products. And there's certainly becoming more awareness throughout the financial services industry. We've seen more registered investment advisors adopting these products and use them as part of their planning model. Also, broker dealers are getting interested in doing that more often. And when you can get outside the systemic risk of the market, you get a different result. And that's what people are looking for, is that different result. So let's talk about an agent who's got decades of experience and they're an old warhorse. Is there a future for them in our industry? What would you say to somebody in those shoes right now?
Well, I think they're in a harvesting mentality. Um, they should go through their book and look at the people who may be in their 80s or older and are candidates, not because you're selling them anything, but because they have policies that have been underfunded or are imploding for other reasons, like COI increases. Then, secondly, of course, most producers sell annuities or life insurance. They shy away from long-term care. But if you're in your 50s or 60s and your clients are that age, there are some great long-term care products, specifically in the annuity industry and also in the life industry. Long-term care never took off when they started to sell it as a freestanding product 30, 35 years ago. We thought it was going to take the industry by storm. It was going to be all we do. And it bombed horrifically, partially because nobody had the experience to determine pricing. And when you don't know how to price for a morbidity event, you could have a big problem, and they did. Now, the life and annuity business has made maybe an imperfect product, but it's 80 to 90% of the solution. So I would go back to clients and talk to them about that. I would also go back, if I sold index products, and just remind them they owe me a hug, and let me talk to their children about the things I did for you 20 years ago when I sold you an Allianz policy.
I think that's an excellent point. Is there's a referral C out there. If you've got an existing book of business, you've done a good job for those customers, their
Yep.
children and grandchildren have an opportunity to meet with you as well. And Gary, you've had an illustrious career with many leadership roles, but I want to ask you, what's the biggest challenge that you've ever faced in business?
Well, close to 30 years ago, I was the chief marketing officer and executive vice president of Executive Life, basically the number two guy partnering with a fellow named Fred Carr, who's a legend in the industry because he changed the industry with innovative products. And the industry was really in the dark ages before him. If you can believe this, back then, the financial committees of life insurance companies, major ones, met quarterly to decide investments they were going to make. Now they meet every 3 hours.
That's
And
constant.
Fred's the one that caused that. What we did is we created a model that was the envy of the industry, and we're lucky enough to attract the number one producers from most every other company. They didn't necessarily leave New York Life or Northwestern Mutual, but they gave us a lot of their business. And then we flew close to the sun, maybe too close, but the assets and liabilities were matched perfectly, and we had a ambitious insurance commissioner who wanted to be governor. He's now a member of the House of Representatives. And he used to say, as insurance commissioner, insurance companies are pigs at the trough. I'm not happy until I put a bullet in an insurance company every day. That's what the insurance commissioner said. So obviously we're a good target here in California. And so he seized the company, even though it was totally solvent. And our assets and liabilities were perfect match. The end of the story is that one of the greatest marketing and uplifting events in the history of the business came to a bounding crash. We were one of only 4 companies that had a triple A rating from Standard & Poor. How many companies have that? We went from that to no ratings at all in 90 days after the commissioner did his number on us. That cost me a lot, but it also taught me a lot. Most of what you'll hear me say in these interviews is from not from brain tissue, it's from scar tissue. And we can at another time talk about that adventure. I did write a best-selling book about it that portended really what happened later is the mortgage calamity in '08. It was absolutely a parallel experience, but it was devastating, not because of me as the many wonderful producers who are still great producers today, Barry Kaye being among them, who suffered with the loss of their policyholders having their policy seized. But even though their policies were seized, they were eventually given back at a premium, and every one of these producers turned around and made lemonade out of the lemons. My reason for bringing that up is right now, we're in a situation where we can make lemonade out of the lemons. I know it for sure. I'm working on some ideas. I'm not ready to reveal them yet, but history repeats itself. That's why it's so important to know the history of our business.
Well, I'm looking forward as we head into these interviews that we're going to do together and that you're going to conduct individually, tapping into all these ideas that you're coming up with. And I look forward to where you're going to take this journey. So before we wrap it up, tell me a little bit of what you might have in mind for future conversations down the road and what financial advisors, insurance agents, those rendering some good advice, what they can look forward to on this series.
Well, not to be facetious, but given what happened with my friend Barry Kaye, I'm going to probably start chronologically because the shadows are getting long for a lot of us. And so I really have some great people that have accomplished legendary achievement. I'm also going to do some discussions about posthumous achievers who they're no longer with us, but they gave us gifts in the industry that we need to re-examine. But then I am of no value to my audience if all I do is ruminate about the past. The past is our teacher. The future is our opportunity. And so I will spend time in this series talking to innovators and people who have achieved positive results in an adverse environment, because we're going to have an adverse environment, but it will be fraught with opportunity. And I pretty much know some of the people that are going to turn lemons into lemonade. So
Yeah, well,
we're gonna have a good time.
Gary, I love what you're saying. My own personal experience as I entered into the business arena was sitting at the feet of highly accomplished, highly successful professionals who took the time to help me and teach me and let me run. And so I'm so glad that you're being generous with your time, that you're going to share your experience with agents. And I agree with you. Problems, yes, there's a lot of problems. Opportunities, huge opportunities come with that. If we can be the solution to those problems, we won't have anything to worry about in our industry in terms of serving our customer base, acquiring new clients, and building our businesses. So I look forward to our next conversation. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Andy. It's been a pleasure.
Indeed.